The ballroom of the Carlton Grand Hotel glittered with quiet perfection. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen light above polished marble floors. Soft music drifted through the room as waiters moved between tables carrying champagne and delicate plates. Every detail had been planned months in advance, every arrangement chosen to impress. This was the rehearsal dinner. Victor Hale stood near the far wall watching. At 62, he had learned the value of observation. His gray suit was simple but perfectly tailored. His posture calm, his expression unreadable. Most of the guests barely noticed him, assuming he was simply another relative who did not belong among executives, investors, and social elites. That assumption had always worked in his favor. His daughter Caroline crossed the room toward him, her face glowing with nervous excitement. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked softly. "I'm perfect," he said. She studied him. "You've been quiet all evening. I like listening." Caroline smiled. "You always do. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you are watching from. It helps more than you know." She laughed. "You and those podcasts." Victor allowed himself a small smile. Across the room, the groom Daniel Whitmore stood surrounded by colleagues from his investment firm. He was young, confident, and polished. Everything about him projected success, the kind of success that impressed people who valued appearance more than substance. Victor had never trusted men like that, not because of arrogance, because arrogance often hid weakness. Caroline touched his arm. "He's nervous too, you know." Victor nodded. "Good, he should be." She frowned slightly. "Dad, I'm joking, but he wasn't." The evening moved smoothly at first. Toasts were made. Laughter echoed. Stories about childhood and future plans filled the air. Victor watched Daniel carefully, studying how he spoke, how he looked at people, how he reacted when attention shifted away from him. Patterns. Victor had built his life on recognizing them. After dinner, Daniel stood to give a speech. The room quieted. He thanked the guests, praised Caroline, complimented the families. Then his tone changed. "There's one more thing I want to say," Daniel continued, raising his glass. He turned toward Victor. "When I first met Caroline's father, I'll be honest, I was confused." Soft laughter from his colleagues. "I couldn't understand how someone so modest could raise someone as incredible as her." Victor felt Caroline stiffen beside him. Daniel smiled wider. "But over time I realized something. Not everyone contributes equally. Some people are builders, others," he shrugged casually, "well, they just watch." More laughter. Victor remained still. Daniel's voice lowered slightly, but the microphone carried every word. "Caroline, you deserve a partner who lifts you higher. And I promise I will. Because no matter what happens, you will never have to carry unnecessary burdens." The word hung in the air. Burden. The room shifted uncomfortably. Caroline's face flushed with shock and anger. "Daniel, stop," she said quietly. But Daniel was already stepping down, smiling as if he had done nothing wrong. Victor placed a gentle hand over his daughter's. "It's all right." "No, it's not," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Victor shook his head. There is nothing to apologize for. Inside, however, something had changed. Not anger, clarity. The rest of the evening passed in tension. Daniel avoided Victor, laughing too loudly with his friends. Guests pretended not to notice. When it ended, Victor left without confrontation. Outside, the night air was cold. He stood for a moment beneath the hotel lights, watching the reflection of the ballroom windows. His phone vibrated. A message from Caroline. "Please don't let this ruin everything." Victor typed a single reply. "It won't." He got into his car. As the city lights passed outside the window, Victor's mind began assembling pieces. Background checks, financial patterns, corporate alliances. Daniel Whitmore had risen too quickly, too cleanly, too perfectly. Victor made one call. A voice answered immediately. "I need a full investigation." There was silence. On who? Victor's eyes reflected the passing lights. My future son-in-law. He ended the call. The next morning the first report arrived, and within minutes Victor understood something important. Daniel Whitmore had not just made a mistake, he had declared war, and Victor had spent his entire life winning wars that no one else even knew existed. The report arrived at 6 in the morning. Victor was already awake. He sat in the quiet of his hotel suite, the city still wrapped in gray light. A cup of black coffee rested, untouched beside him as he opened the encrypted file on his tablet. The man he had called the night before had never disappointed him in 3 decades. The first page confirmed what Victor had suspected. Daniel Whitmore's career had not been built on brilliance. It had been built on leverage. Victor read carefully, his expression unchanged. Shell companies, consulting fees that had no clear origin, offshore transfers routed through multiple jurisdictions. Nothing illegal at first glance. But patterns mattered more than appearances. By the time he reached the 3rd page, Victor leaned back slightly. This was bigger than arrogance. Daniel was accepting quiet incentives to influence corporate mergers, steering deals, manipulating valuations, creating artificial urgency so clients made expensive mistakes. It was clever, but it was also dangerous and illegal. Victor finished reading and closed the file. His phone rang. "It's worse than you thought," the investigator said. "I assumed it would be. There's also political exposure. If this breaks publicly, it could take down several people." Victor considered this. "Good." There was a pause. "You're not angry?" the investigator asked. "No," Victor replied calmly. "I'm focused." He ended the call. Moments later, another message arrived. A list of Daniel's recent communications. One number appeared repeatedly. Victor copied it and made a second call. Grace Lynn answered. She had once been a federal prosecutor before leaving government to run a private intelligence firm. She understood power and, more importantly, she understood discretion. "I need your help," Victor said. "Always a pleasure," she replied. "Financial corruption, potential fraud, corporate manipulation." Grace's tone sharpened. "Who?" Victor hesitated for only a second. "Daniel Whitmore." "Silence. That's your future son-in-law for now." Grace exhaled slowly. "This is personal." "It is. I'll need full access. You'll have it." By noon, the investigation had expanded. Grace uncovered a network of executives who relied on Daniel to shape outcomes quietly. He had positioned himself as indispensable, a rising star, the kind of man firms protected because he made them. Victor admired the structure. He also knew how fragile it was. That evening, Caroline came to his suite. Her face was tense. "You left without saying goodbye. I didn't want to create a scene." She sat across from him. "Daniel says you misunderstood." Victor watched her carefully. "And you?" She hesitated. "I don't know." Victor nodded. "That's honest." She leaned forward. He was nervous. He didn't mean it. Victor's voice remained gentle. "Caroline, I have lived long enough to know that people reveal themselves when they believe they are safe." Her eyes filled with uncertainty. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we need to be patient." "With what?" "The truth." She frowned. "You're investigating him." Victor did not deny it. She looked away. "This could destroy everything. Or protect you." Her voice rose slightly. "From what?" Victor stood and walked toward the window. "The kind of future that looks perfect from the outside and collapses when it matters most." She stood as well. "You're wrong about him." Victor turned. "I hope so." Caroline left without another word. Victor remained still for several minutes. Then his phone vibrated again. "Grace, we have something urgent." "What?" "Daniel is planning a major deal next week. A merger involving a pharmaceutical company." Victor's instincts sharpened. "That sector is heavily regulated." "Yes," Grace said, "which makes this dangerous. He's pushing it through quickly." "Why?" "Because the company is under quiet investigation for data manipulation." Victor understood immediately. Daniel was positioning himself to profit before the collapse. Can you prove it? Victor asked. Not yet, Victor thought. Then we force him to move faster. Grace was silent. You want him to panic? Yes. How? Victor's voice was calm. We create pressure. That night, anonymous inquiries began reaching Daniel's firm. Regulatory questions, investor concerns, whispers about irregularities. The effect was immediate. Daniel called Caroline in frustration. He's trying to sabotage me, he said. Caroline called Victor. Stop this. Victor listened without interrupting. You don't trust me, she said. I trust patterns. He's innocent. Then the truth will protect him. Caroline's voice broke. If you're wrong, you'll lose me. Victor closed his eyes briefly. If I'm wrong, I'll accept that. He ended the call. The next morning, Grace sent a final message. He took the bait. Victor read the attached documents. Daniel had accelerated the merger, cut corners, signed illegal guarantees, everything Victor needed. For the first time since the rehearsal dinner, Victor smiled, because Daniel had not just insulted him, he had exposed himself, and the man who thought he had everything under control had no idea that the ground beneath him had already begun to collapse. By the following week, the pressure had begun to show. Victor noticed it immediately when he saw Daniel again. The engagement party had been scheduled months in advance, and canceling it would have raised too many questions. So Daniel arrived, dressed perfectly as always, greeting guests with the same confident smile. But Victor saw the difference in the details. The tightness around his eyes, the slight hesitation before answering questions, the way his hand tightened around his glass, fear. Victor stood near the terrace doors, observing the room while soft jazz filled the background. Wealthy guests, investors, and industry leaders moved through conversations, unaware that one of them was about to lose everything. Grace approached quietly. He's under investigation now, she said. Victor did not look at her. Officially, not yet, but regulators are asking questions. His firm is nervous. Victor nodded. And the merger? He pushed it through yesterday. The guarantees he signed violate multiple compliance rules. Victor allowed himself a slow breath. Good. Grace studied him. You're calm. I always am. Your daughter isn't. Victor's gaze shifted toward Caroline across the room. She stood beside Daniel, her smile-strained eyes, searching the crowd as if trying to hold everything together. This will hurt her, Grace said. Yes, Victor replied, but less than the alternative. That evening, Daniel finally approached him. Can we talk? Daniel asked. Victor gestured toward the terrace. The night air was cool. City lights stretched endlessly beyond the glass railing. Daniel leaned forward slightly. I know you're behind this. Victor raised an eyebrow. Behind what? The inquiries, the pressure, the rumors. Victor said nothing. Daniel's voice lowered. You're trying to destroy my career because of one joke. Victor's expression remained neutral. It wasn't a joke. Daniel clenched his jaw. You think you're protecting her, but you're ruining her future. Victor met his gaze. I am revealing it. Daniel stepped closer. You don't understand how this world works. Victor smiled faintly. I understand it better than you do. Daniel's confidence cracked for a moment. What do you want? The truth. Daniel exhaled sharply. Fine, yes, I make aggressive deals. Everyone does. That's how success works. Victor tilted his head. Fraud is not aggression. Daniel's voice rose. You have no proof. Victor remained calm. Not yet. Daniel froze. The silence stretched. Then why are you doing this? Daniel asked. Victor's voice softened. Because my daughter deserves a partner she can trust. Daniel laughed bitterly. You're not as powerless as you look, are you? Victor did not answer. Daniel studied him. Who are you? Victor stepped closer. A man who has spent 40 years investing in people and outcomes. Daniel's eyes widened slightly. What does that mean? It means, Victor said, that the companies funding your deals, many of them answer to me. Daniel went pale. That's impossible. Victor shrugged. You should always know who sits quietly in the room. Daniel's voice shook. You set me up. No, Victor replied. You exposed yourself. Daniel stepped back. This isn't over. Victor's expression became colder. It already is. Inside, Caroline watched through the glass. Her face was filled with fear. Later that night, she confronted Victor. "What did you do?" "Nothing that wasn't necessary." She shook her head. "He says you're manipulating everything." Victor's voice was steady. "Caroline, I have one question for you. Do you trust him completely?" She hesitated. Victor saw the answer in her silence. Tears filled her eyes. "I don't know anymore." Victor placed a hand on her shoulder. "That uncertainty is your protection." She looked at him. "Tell me the truth." "I will," he said. "When the time is right." The following morning, the first public leak appeared. A financial blog published an article questioning Daniel's merger. By afternoon, larger media outlets began investigating. Investors demanded answers. Regulators requested documents. Daniel's firm issued a statement denying wrongdoing. But the damage had begun. Victor stood in his study watching the coverage. Grace called. "It's spreading faster than expected." "Good, he's panicking." Victor nodded. "That's when mistakes happen." Grace's voice lowered. "There's one more development." "What?" "He tried to move money offshore last night." Victor smiled. "That will be the final piece." The next hours were critical. Authorities opened a formal inquiry. Daniel's accounts were flagged, transactions frozen. His firm suspended him pending investigation. By evening, Caroline arrived at Victor's home. She looked exhausted. "It's all real, isn't it?" Victor did not speak. She sat down heavily. "I married a stranger." Victor's voice softened. "No, you almost did." She looked at him. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "Because you needed to see the truth yourself." She closed her eyes. "What happens now?" Victor answered calmly. "Now he faces the consequences." But even as he spoke, Victor knew the situation was not fully resolved, because men like Daniel rarely surrendered quietly, and desperation often made them dangerous. The news broke the following morning. By 8 o'clock, every major financial network was running the same headline: allegations of corporate fraud, insider manipulation, regulatory violations. Daniel Whitmore's face appeared on screens across the country, his confident smile now framed by words like investigation, misconduct, and scandal. Victor watched from the quiet of his study. He did not feel satisfaction. He felt control. Grace called. "He tried to contact investors overnight," she said. "He's desperate. He's offering explanations, excuses, anything to stop the collapse." Victor nodded. "And?" "No one is listening." Victor ended the call and stood for a moment, staring out at the city. The sun had just risen, casting long shadows across the skyline. For years he had built systems designed to survive crises. He understood how quickly power shifted when confidence disappeared. That afternoon, Caroline arrived again. This time she looked different, not confused, resolved. "He lied to me," she said. Victor gestured for her to sit. She didn't. "I spoke to his firm. They confirmed everything. The offshore accounts, the falsified guarantees, even the merger." Victor remained silent. Caroline's voice trembled. "I asked him directly. He still denied it." "That's who he is," Victor said. She looked at him. "I'm calling off the wedding." The words seemed to release something inside her. Victor felt relief, but he did not show it. "You're certain?" "Yes." She sat down finally, exhaustion washing over her. "I thought I knew him. I thought ambition meant strength, but he was just afraid of losing what he built." Victor nodded. "Fear drives most corruption." Caroline wiped her eyes. "What happens to him now?" Victor's voice was steady. "He will face the law." But the situation escalated faster than expected. That evening, Grace called again. "He's missing." Victor's expression did not change. "Explain." "He left his apartment this afternoon. His phone is off. His accounts are frozen. We believe he's trying to flee." Victor stood. "That confirms guilt. It also makes him unpredictable." Victor considered the possibilities. Where would he go? Grace hesitated. "There is one option. He has a private air charter scheduled under another name." Victor moved immediately. Within minutes, he and Grace were in a car heading toward the private terminal at the airport. Rain had begun falling, turning the roads into reflections of city lights. "Authorities?" Victor asked. "They're on their way." But Victor knew timing mattered. When they arrived, the small terminal was nearly empty. Then Victor saw him. Daniel stood near the aircraft, arguing with a pilot. When Daniel noticed Victor, his face hardened. "You ruined everything," he said. "You did that yourself." Daniel laughed bitterly. "You think this is over? I will rebuild. I always do." Victor stepped closer. "Not this time." Daniel's eyes were wild. "She chose you over me, no." Victor replied. "She chose the truth." Daniel's voice dropped. "You took my future. You never deserved it." Sirens approached in the distance. Daniel looked around. For a moment, Victor thought he might run. Instead, Daniel's shoulders slumped. "They would have never caught me if you hadn't interfered." Victor said nothing. Federal agents arrived seconds later. They took Daniel into custody without resistance. As they led him away, Daniel looked back at Victor. "This isn't victory," he said. Victor met his gaze. "It is for her." The rain intensified. Grace stood beside Victor. "You ended this." Victor shook his head. "She did." That night, back at the hotel, Caroline sat quietly with her father. "I feel relieved," she admitted, "and also ashamed." Victor placed a hand over hers. "There is no shame in trusting someone. The only mistake is refusing to see the truth when it appears." She leaned against him. "I almost married him, but you didn't." Silence settled between them. The following weeks were filled with legal proceedings, media attention, and public fallout. Daniel's firm cooperated fully with investigators. Executives testified. Evidence accumulated. The wedding that had once been planned with perfection never happened. Instead, Caroline rebuilt her life, slowly, carefully, and for the first time since the rehearsal dinner, Victor allowed himself to believe the future would be different. But the final chapter had not yet been written, because true victory was not exposure. It was protection. Part 5. The trial began 6 months later. By then, the storm had settled into something quieter, but no less powerful. Headlines no longer screamed Daniel Whitmore's name every day, yet the damage remained. Investors had moved on. His former firm had replaced him. The world, as it always did, continued forward. Victor sat in the courtroom with the same calm he had carried through every stage of the process. Caroline sat beside him. This time her hand rested steadily in his. There was no hesitation left in her expression. The uncertainty that had once clouded her judgment had been replaced by clarity and strength. When Daniel entered, he looked older, not in years but in weight. The confidence that had once defined him had been replaced by something smaller. He avoided eye contact with everyone in the room. The prosecution's case was precise. Fraud, market manipulation, illegal incentives, financial deception. Each piece of evidence built upon the last. Documents, recorded calls, offshore transfers, witness, testimony. The structure Daniel had spent years building collapsed in public view. Victor watched without emotion. This was not revenge, it was accountability. During a break, Caroline turned to him. "I thought I would feel angry," she said, "but I don't." "That means you've already moved on," Victor replied. She nodded. "I just wanted to end." It did. After several weeks, the verdict was delivered. Guilty on all major charges, Daniel was sentenced to prison, barred from working in finance, and ordered to repay millions in damages. The courtroom emptied slowly. Outside, the air felt lighter. Caroline exhaled deeply. "It's over." Victor looked at her. Yes, but he knew something important. Endings were never just endings. They were beginnings. Over the following months, Caroline rebuilt her life with patience and purpose. She returned to her career, this time with sharper instincts. She no longer trusted appearances. She studied patterns the way her father always had. One evening, she visited Victor's home. "I want to learn," she said. "Learn what?" "How you see the world." Victor smiled slightly. That takes time. I have time. So they began conversations at breakfast, discussions about business, risk, and human nature, lessons about power, patience, and discipline. Caroline absorbed everything. Grace continued to visit, often joining their sessions. She joked that Caroline was becoming more dangerous than both of them combined. Victor did not disagree. One afternoon, as they reviewed investment strategies, Caroline asked, "Why did you never tell me how powerful you really were?" Victor considered the question. "Because power changes how people see you. I wanted you to build your own confidence first," she nodded. "And now you see both." Years passed. Caroline eventually became a partner in Victor's firm. She built a reputation of integrity and precision. Clients trusted her because she understood both strength and empathy. One night, standing on the balcony overlooking the city, she asked, "Do you regret what happened?" Victor thought carefully. "I regret that you had to experience it, but I do not regret the outcome," she smiled. "I'm stronger because of it." Victor looked at the skyline. "So am I." The ballroom of the Carlton Grand Hotel still hosted events. Weddings, celebrations, and promises filled the same space where everything had begun. But for Victor, the memory no longer carried anger. It carried clarity, because the true victory had never been destroying Daniel. It had been protecting his daughter's future and ensuring that no one would ever mistake quiet strength for weakness again. And if you've been listening this far, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. It helps more than you know.